break, but I really want to keep the pacing so we can get our bellies filled. She's to the toilet, so she's coming. And the annoying thing is you have to go upstairs or downstairs to do that. Okay, so our next speaker is our special guest, Eluchie from Nigeria. And he's a human and health rights attorney, secretary of Foundation of Ovum, and head of Ovum Legal Committee. And he's going to talk about using international conventions to protect our children from substance abuse. So,
thank you very much.
Good luck. Just keep it close.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's quite intimidating speaking at such a very powerful speaker like Stefan, but we'll do our very best. I'm talking on using the instrumentality of international conventions as a tool to keep children free from drugs. And we know the authority of these international conventions, and my designation is I'm the Secretary of Ovum and President of the West African Civil Society Network on Drugs.
Can you hear it all? Is it
Is
a little bit closer? Net closer.
Put it in my mouth.
Put it out.
Maybe raise the volume.
Yeah,
But I think. Hello.
yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Good. So that's my designation. I'm a lawyer in Nigeria, and I've been practicing law for over 30 years now. First of all, ask yourself, what is the primary role of the state? The primary role of every state is to keep its citizens, take care of security and welfare and well-being of its citizenry. So any state that calls itself as it's really a state has to do these basic things, and one of these things is to take care of your children, because the children actually represent the future of the country, of every territory. Even the most irresponsible, the most irresponsible states try to be seen as protecting the lives of its children. One of the things we're going to explore is using petitioning or litigation as veritable means to keep children free from drugs. Because in all states, even the constitutional democracies and the autocracies, the state tries to have, there is a provision for the right to life, the right to health, and the right to education. So we have to explore these means as one of the tools through which we can actually ensure that the child is free from drugs. Because if the child is free from drugs, society will be drug-free. What are the specific legal instruments that are available? And we ask ourselves, do we have these instruments? Are they available? Real? And the answer is yes, they are available. They are available at the global level, at the national level, and at the local levels. We have instruments that when we use them, we can actually ensure that the child is free from drugs. But the irony is that for a very long while, in fact, till now, we rarely use these instruments. They are there. The legal instruments at the United Nations level, as at the global level, we have the CRC, which Stefan has talked so very well about. And we also have the International Drug Control Conventions. There are 3 of them, which we all know. I won't need to repeat them again, but these are available there. And the beauty about international conventions is that once a state has signed on or has ratified these international conventions, they become part of the domestic laws. So if your country has signed on to protect children at the international level, a state can only enforce its own laws if itself is a responsible state. If that same state does not obey what it has signed on at the international level, it has no framework to demand respect of its own laws. So we should think of this as using these international instruments, get to understand and get to know about them, and know how to domesticate them and then try to use them to advance our cause. First of all, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Section 33, is very, very emphatic on protecting the rights of the child, and I don't need to talk much about this. Stefan has already spoken extensively on Article 33, but it's something we can use at our national levels to ensure that our states do protect children. Because if you sign up to it, you gotta respect it. The other one is the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. That one in Article 25 makes specific provisions and urges states to protect children. I mean, I understand that these documents are very large and nobody wants to go through it, but then there are specific provisions which you can target and pull out and use it to either petition state authorities or even litigate at the local level. To say, yes, this is what we've signed on to, and this is what we can enforce in our own respective countries. Article 28 also urges countries to cooperate for the protection of youths. So it's not just even domestic. Countries are enjoined to cooperate to protect children, and this is what they have all signed on to. The next one is at the continental level is also the Convention on Psychotropic Substances, 1971 law, which has also specific provisions in Article 21.2. And that provides that state parties shall take measures to prevent the use of psychotropic substances among children and young persons. Now, this you may just read it as an ordinary language, but when before a lawyer, with a lawyer, these languages can be expanded to ensure accountability by the state parties. That yes, like in my own country, Nigeria, you signed on to this willingly. This is part of our domestic laws now. So if you have signed on to protect children, you've got to protect children. And that's irrespective of whatever nonsense the UNODC or they are now talking, because they have agreed. And I think it's one thing we've not really explored. And I will encourage you to begin to look at this more and more. The United Nations Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotics and Drugs also has similar provisions. What I have done is I have lifted out sections, specific sections. There are more, but these are just like the basics, which we can look at and use it to implement law, drug-free communities and keep the children free from drugs. It's not just at the global level. At the continental level, and what I'm going to do in this paper, I'm going to take both African, European, and Asian examples. So we have seen at the global level, at the UN conventions, what is available. At the African level, we also have Article 28 of the Charter on Rights and Welfare of the Child, which is very, very specific and talks about protecting children from drugs. I didn't manufacture this, they've been there for decades. So how come nobody's opening these books? How come we're not even thinking about it? The African Union also has a plan of action, and these are actionable. These are litigatable. I mean, they are things that you can, they are justiciable. You can actually approach the courts. This is for Africa. And also the Africa, it continues. I mean, there are several provisions of continental legislations at the African level, which we can apply. We can ask our domestic courts, even if national, in my country for instance, the Supreme Court has ruled that national domestic laws are subject to global treaties. So if that is the case, even if the government has a brainwave and says legalize drugs, we can say no, there's an international provision which you are going against, unless you go through the route of extricating the country from that international convention. You are bound by it. And that local legislation, to the extent of its incompatibility with the foreign legislation, is void. I don't know if that operates in most other countries, but I think that the lawyers in your various countries can now make the argument or whatever argument that suits the local terrain. At the European level, the European Child Rights Strategy has specific provisions which protects children, their mental health, and gives them child protection systems. I mean, the details, these are not manufactured documents. They are there in the statute books. And I don't know if Europe is even easier, because Europe is like becoming like a federation with the European Union, where the laws are centralized and every member of the European Union has to abide by EU laws. So if these laws are there, if the European Council framework decision is there, how dare the Netherlands or Sweden go against explicit EU provisions which they have consented to. That's my thinking. But I think lawyers who versed in European Union laws or domestic laws in Europe will have better ideas on how to go about this. But basically, if a country has willingly signed up to documents, they are bound by it. Because that's what makes the state responsible. Also at the continental level for Europe, it continues. There's a directive of, which I have there. I believe these slides will be available to all the participants. Rene? The slides will be available to everybody. Yeah. Because I don't have to read through.
Yes.
Okay, so they can always go through. But in European Union, there is also the EU Public Health Program, which is actionable things that you can use and say, okay, we signed on, so we've got to abide by these things we signed on. The Asian, you have the Association of Southeast Asian Countries. They also have the Asian Guidelines for the Protection of Children in the Context of Drug Abuse, 2018. Now, if we also have the same thing for Africa, for Europe, and also they have also the same thing in the OAS. OAS is the Organization of American States. They have specific provisions which protect child. And why it's important to keep on focusing on the child is that nobody can be against protecting children. Nobody. You'll be evil if you come out and say no. And once you are working towards child protection, eventually the society gets drug-free. So that's what the Asian guidelines provide, and there's another one I have on the Asian also. The Asian Plan of Action on Drug Control 2016 to 2018. It also has sections that focuses on prevention of drug abuse among children and young people. The sections are there. I mean, these are on ground. One of our problems that we've not really gone through is we have neglected the law, legal framework, legal approach. We focus more on advocacy, on research, on publications, but the laws are there. So why have we not thought of that aspect? Okay, going further, like I said, at the global, continental, even at the regional level, in Africa, we have like 4 regions. We have West Africa, East Africa, North and South Africa. ECOWAS has more detailed provision that all these countries can protect children. And the sections are there, I'm not going to go through them, but you all have them. And in South Africa, the SADC also has similar provisions. And I believe virtually every regional bloc, maybe the East African Development Commission or EAC, East African Commission will also have, East African Community rather, we also have similar provisions. So it is up to us to, in our planning, in our programming, also incorporate legal personnel, lawyers, who can fish out these sections. Because I know if I was South African, I would have brought up more sections, but these are even the basics. Can this stand in courts to enforce governments to comply with the need to protect children? I believe so. In my country, it does. Now, one thing with the courts processes, it's low cost and it's high impact. What do I mean by low cost? Get a lawyer, brief him, he files papers, 2, 3, 4, 5 adjournments, the judgment is delivered. If it's not okay, you may go on appeal until we get to the final court. So the legal process is a bit, it's cost effective, it's low cost, and it's high impact. Why was high impact? In the sense that once you have a favorable judgment that compels a state to put in drug-free policies or protect children, it beats 1,000 rallies. It beats 1,000 petitions. Because it's a court judgment, unless the state is an irresponsible state, or if it's a state that prides itself amongst the community of nations, it must comply with judgments of court. And if a court has said, you do this, you do this, one of the things that is very good, and I don't know about if you are aware of what is called the mandamus. It's a Latin phrase, but it's an action to compel a public authority to comply with the law that is already existing. You compel it. Okay, we have signed up to ABC protocols at the international level, and it says you must do ABC. So their High Court judge compel our government to do ABC. Now, why it's beautiful is if authority to which that order is given by a court does not comply, it becomes, it's like, it's said to be in contempt of court, which at times can lead to imprisonment. So if the Minister of Health is sued in any jurisdiction and say, this is what you should do, and the court grants that order of mandamus, compelling the Minister of Health or the head of the agency in charge of drugs to ensure that they have child protection programs. If you don't enforce that child protection programs, the Minister of Health is liable to be put to jail. And nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants. So litigation actually can compel government and then source for a viable plaintiff. You need to have, of course, for every action you gotta have a plaintiff. So either you look for a child who has become a victim. This is what is called public interest litigation. It's, and it's, like I said, it's low cost, high impact. Now, that is on one aspect. The second aspect is also to target those who are benefiting from this drug. I mean, we can ask government, okay, don't just seize or confiscate properties of those who are dealing in drugs. Whenever such things are seized, the proceeds should be directed to fund child protection programs or drug-free programs. Actually, when you are applying to a court for that order of mandamus, you can insert it as part of your plan, part of your demands, because you only get what you demand from a court. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it. So if you ask the court, we want that this, while you are compelling the state to comply with these rules or these orders, let it also focus or divert proceeds from drugs towards protecting children from drugs. You score two goals with one fell swoop. You get funding for your desired goals, and then you also stop the scourge from spreading. Now, what I've been saying all along is that we need to broaden the stakeholder base. For damn too long, we've had focus on researchers, which is good because they brought beautiful documents that we can now practicalize, implement. We've brought in scientists, we've brought in experts, but all this implementation is a problem because there has been no force of law, there has been no actionable instrument to the state authorities to compel whatever is said at the UN level, whatever is signed on, the various conventions, we have not compelled them to domesticate it. And you can only do that actually with law. That is countries where the rule of law exists. Because there are such countries where they don't respect laws. But most countries try to appear to be disciplined countries. So we need to expand, we need to incorporate litigation into our plans of action. And it's very vital. Why do I say this? I mean, not going to show it open to you. This is a valuable phrase. But the instruments are there. The conventions at the continental, global, regional, even national levels. The venues are there. Everywhere there are courts, there are offices to petition. The children are there. The victims who can use as plaintiffs are there. So why has the approach of litigation not been explored? That's the question we'll have to take home. Why has that approach not been explored? Are there no lawyers in your countries? Are there nobody willing to explore that option? So let us dare. You can only win when you dare. And I hope that the whole idea of this is to stimulate us to go home and think of how we can explore the litigation. Oh, sorry, before I close, okay, skip something. Oh, this is not the final one that I was saying. That's what it means. I sent one that, because I have there's a slide I had which says drugs is the new tobacco. Now you ask yourself, how did tobacco control succeed? For over half a century, the science was known that tobacco was bad. For over half a century, rallies, people were dying of cancer. We had all the gory pictures, we had everything. But still, there was not much movement. There was so much movement but little progress until we had the Master Settlement Agreement in the United States of America, which compelled the tobacco multinationals to pay several billions of dollars towards curtailing and curbing drugs. Because if you hit them at their pocketbooks, it makes a change. So if we agree that drugs is the new tobacco, perhaps we should ask ourselves, what can we borrow from how tobacco control succeeded? Can we adapt it to drugs? And the answer is yes. So if tobacco control for over 50 years was doing rallies and everything and did not succeed much until the Master Settlement Agreement, which was a product of efforts by about 48 states in the United States, which sued the multinational tobacco companies, perhaps in drugs, we should now think of the litigation approach. And when we think of it, that means we have to ask ourselves, where do we litigate? How do we litigate? Who are the respondents? Respondents, who are you going to sue? Is it the state? Is it the beneficiaries from drugs? Is it the CSOs, the NGOs which have been pushing this trash about drugs, legalization? Because they are all just, you can actually litigate them. They have jurisdiction, you can litigate against them. Is it Judge Soros? Because if his actions, if his funds is actually hurting our cause, you think of how to litigate. Because whenever there's a wrong, it will be jus imperative. Whenever there's a wrong, there must be a way to address that wrong. So we have to think, we have to think, we have to think. If it's litigation, let us do litigation. So that slide is missing in this one, so I sent so many slides, so maybe there was some confusion. Now, this is the reason why we do all this, the family, the children. Maybe that's the passion, that's the source of the passion. And then, so when you think of them, because the future appears very bleak if we don't do the right things. Thank you very much. I was right on time.
Yes, thank you very much. And you're right. The reason why we do this is because we're family. Just write the right notes, because I have so many papers here. This is the one. Okay, good. I want to introduce our next speaker. That is David Evans. Where is he? There he is. Please come onto the stage. He is an attorney with Cannabis Industry Victim Education for Lawyers, Civil, and he's going to talk about holding the marijuana cannabis industry accountable. And his key point will be the pot shops, the medical marijuana, nuisance, psychosis, addiction, consequences, and costs. So I'm very curious. I don't know how we are, because marijuana is a big thing here in the Netherlands.
Hi, good morning. I want to speak to the Dutch people to begin with. I married a Dutch woman. My wife grew up on a family farm in Egmond aan Zee, up near Alkmaar. And when I met her in Princeton, New Jersey, it was right around Christmas. And she invited me to a Dutch Christmas party. So I went to the party, and I was sitting there drinking Albert Heijn coffee and Koude and all of a sudden somebody threw cookies into the room. And then Zwarte Piet walked in, okay? And then he had a broom, and he was sort of hitting people with the broom. And then a guy walked in who looked like a Catholic bishop, and that was Santa Claus. And I had to get down on my knees and recite a poem to Santa Claus. Okay. So I looked at this Dutch woman and I thought, this is a little strange, but very charming. And so I asked her to marry me. And in the last 42 years, I've been introduced to poly, hodding. I really love that. My children grew up with Mausha's in the morning for breakfast. And we have a grandchild now, and we sing Slop Kindje Slop to him. So it's been a very good part of my life. If my wife dies on me, I know where to go to find another one. That's a big goal. So be prepared. I have been anti-marijuana for decades, and I've been through all of the phases of trying to deal with this that you have tried to deal with. What I've learned over the years is that we have to fight it on many levels. What's going on with the UN that Stefan is doing is very important. But I deal on the local level in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the capital of North Carolina, Trenton, New Jersey, which is the capital of New Jersey, and Albany, New York, and other states. They do not care about the United Nations. We have never found that argument to be persuasive. They don't even care about the American Federal Food and Drug Administration. It's too distant for them, okay? And we will make the argument, look, marijuana is not medicine. The Food and Drug Administration says it's not medicine. They don't care. We talk about violating UN conventions. They don't care, okay? Now, what I have learned from those years is that we have to make emotional arguments. The other side makes emotional arguments and we're not aware of it. And I picked one up with this whole thing about we don't want to stigmatize drug users, okay? Nobody wants to be in the position of stigmatizing somebody else, but that's an emotional argument. It's not a logical argument. And they use that kind of emotional argument against us. So what I have learned is to use emotional arguments coupled with rational arguments. Now, we're all rational people, science-based, we've been raised on logic and so forth. It's not going to win this war for us. We have to use emotional arguments. So I've also come to the conclusion that there is a power imbalance here. The other side has more money than we do, and in forums, in places where money decides the issue, they usually win. Now, in the United States, we have what are called ballot initiatives, where citizens can vote on a state level. And usually, well, I'll put it to you this way, except for one circumstance, the other side has won the ballot initiatives because they appeal to the public with advertising and they have more money to do that. We won some ballot initiatives this year. Now, it used to be 10, 15 years ago, we were winning every battle, and then we started losing every battle. And a lot of states became legalized, either through medical marijuana or recreational. The tide is now turning. We're starting to win again. In Florida this year, they had a ballot initiative where the citizens can vote on legalization. And the marijuana industry put $150 million into winning that battle, and they lost. Wow. Okay, $150 million. And $140 million came from one marijuana company, and Susan Wiles, who was representing that marijuana company as a lobbyist, is now President Trump's what do you call it? Chief of staff. Chief of staff. Marijuana lobbyist is now his chief of staff. So I'm sure that the marijuana industry donated to President Trump. He came out in favor of the Florida legalization thing, but then really never pushed it in the campaign. So where can we go that money does not make the difference? Well, even with state legislatures, we can do that. Last year, we had a medical marijuana bill in the North Carolina legislature where I live, and we defeated it by using a combination of short, emotional, coupled with rational arguments. Now, state legislators have the attention span of a rabbit on amphetamines, okay? You cannot give them a 20-page paper and expect that they're going to read it. So what I did is I sent them a series of one-page letters that had an emotional argument backed up with a rational argument. For example, marijuana hurts elderly people. Here is the science. Marijuana causes heart attacks. Here is the science. Things like that. And I had legislators calling me, thanking me for giving them information. Something they could read very quickly with a big headline, didn't take a lot of absorption, but was backed up by the science. You have a booklet here. I'm here today representing Americans against legalizing marijuana. We are to the right And by that I mean we are the most conservative anti-marijuana legal organization in the United States. I put this book together. It's The Risks of Marijuana Use. You will see that everything in here has a citation with the URL that you can look it up on the internet to confirm everything that I wrote. I read every single study that's in here, and you can look it up yourself. This gets into arguments about marijuana that have not been raised. It's a very detailed paper on all the health problems that are caused by marijuana. And I'll be getting into some more of that later on. So I'm all in favor of litigation. Why is that? Because we have power in the courts. We can go toe to toe with the other side, and the judge has to listen. It's not like a legislator doesn't have to listen to us. Okay, a judge has to listen to you. And most of my litigation in my life has been against big law firms, big multinational corporations. I've sued Exxon, the Bank of New York, and so forth. They don't do any better than I do. All right, so if we can get smart lawyers in Nigeria, for example, to get in front of the judges, you can make arguments that are a mixture of emotion, logic, and science. And the court has to consider it. Or if you go before a jury, you get a jury of your peers to where when they look at somebody that has marijuana psychosis and that was given a marijuana product and not warned about marijuana psychosis. I have a case right now involving a professional athlete in New Jersey who started using synthetic marijuana products made from hemp, went into a psychosis, felt that he was about to be arrested by the FBI, and he jumped out of a car and jumped off a bridge head first into a river. And he is now permanently damaged. He can no longer be a professional athlete. So we have a lawsuit now saying, why was he not warned that these products could cause psychosis? And why wasn't he warned about any mental health problem with the use of these products? The marijuana industry in the United States has been allowed to get away with murder. We have case after case now of psychosis involving young people that have resulted in deaths. We have a case we're looking at right now of a 17-year-old girl, physically a beautiful young woman, who got a gummy that had a high potency THC. She came home, she texted to her friend, whoa, something's wrong here. I need to go to the hospital. I had too much, that gummy was too much. That was the last communication she gave to any other human being. She left her house barefoot, ran down the street, and jumped off a highway bridge and died. And we have a case of a young woman who went over to somebody's house and he gave her some hits off his bong, and he had put very high potency marijuana into the bong. She killed him with a knife, stabbed him 122 times, killed her own dog, and when the police got there, she was stabbing herself. Okay? This woman was in a marijuana-induced psychosis. I know her personally. She's one of the nicest people I'd ever want to meet. Okay? And the court basically agreed. Yeah, it was, you were out of your mind. You were in a psychosis. We have another case in New York. A kid came over with a vape, high-potency THC vape. This kid smoked it. He said, I want to go out on the balcony and get some fresh air, and he never came back. Okay? Going into an immediate psychosis very quickly. These are the types of things that are happening right now. So what has interfered with our ability to get people to address marijuana? First of all, there's a perception that marijuana is benign. Okay, now when I smoked pot in college back in the 1960s, marijuana was maybe 2 or 3%. It was probably relatively benign at that point compared to today. But that is the public perception of marijuana. Also, the public perception is that it's a medicine. Okay? And I think also there's a feeling among a lot of people they'd like to be able to use marijuana. Now, they're not going to say that, but they'll say, well, we should legalize it because so many minorities are getting arrested for marijuana, or it's a medicine. And people are not used to thinking about marijuana as something that has damaged them, so they don't go to lawyers. When they have an underweight birth child, they don't think marijuana caused this. When somebody has a psychosis, they don't think that marijuana caused it. When somebody has excessive bleeding because they're on blood thinners and they're using marijuana, they don't think that marijuana caused it. When they develop testicular cancer, they don't think that marijuana caused it. So they don't go to a lawyer and ask for help. And that's one of the problems. The other problem we found with the courts is that because states become enthralled with marijuana, the states that have legalized it, the state agencies that are in those states are not looking out for the public. They are protecting the marijuana industry because it's a source of income for the state. And we have given them all the information about the dangers of marijuana, they ignore it. And if it comes down between protecting the public or protecting the industry, they protect the industry. And that's where they're at right now. And the judges are no different. We're having difficulty in New Jersey, New York, and Michigan, all of which are heavily marijuana states, with getting judges to take these lawsuits. We've had them dismissed on claims of failure to state a claim. I've been involved in all these lawsuits. I didn't do some of them. But in every single case, there is no way the judge should have dismissed the case. There is no way. And they gave very feeble arguments for it. But the state, these judges are appointed by politicians, and they're having a lot of difficulty ruling against the marijuana industry. So we have to learn how to overcome that. Marijuana is just not, smoking a joint on a Saturday night at home anymore. I think a lot of people, when they think of legalization, they think, well, what's so bad about smoking a pot, on Saturday night and watching a movie? It's not bad. They do not get the whole thing about the commercialization. They don't understand about the high potency THC. It's a completely different drug today than it was back in the 1960s. They have products now, crystalline THC products that you can buy that are 99% THC, 99%. And I got plenty stoned on 2 or 3% THC, okay? Can you imagine what 99% will do to you? It's being sold all over the United States in food, soft drinks, candy, all of which are attractive to children. The marijuana industry today purposely puts things that are kid-friendly. I don't know if you know what Sesame Street is, but it's a children's, they use Sesame Street characters. They use Santa Claus in their advertising, all that kind of stuff. And they do very aggressive marketing. And the methods of consumption have changed. It's no longer just smoking a joint. You get vaping, you can drink it, you can bake it in cookies, you can bake it in brownies, you can put it in gummy bears. There's so many more opportunities. This is typical of a vape, marijuana vape. And these are marijuana dispensaries. Now in the United States we call them dispensaries, okay, because it sounds medical. But this is typical of what a dispensary looks like in the United States. And if you haven't legalized marijuana in your country yet, take a look at this. Do you really want one of these in your neighborhood? No. The Surgeon General of the United States under the first Trump administration was very anti-marijuana. And he said that marijuana of today is not your mother's marijuana. He's speaking to children of my generation. The THC levels are extremely high. This is an example. You'll see the second URL there is the one that has the crystalline THC, which is 99% THC. The problem with this high-potency THC is that people that have never used marijuana, have not built up a tolerance to it, are being encouraged to use this high-potency THC right from the start. And now other people that have been using it for a while build up a tolerance and will not be as strongly affected by it. But people that go to a marijuana store, they're not being told, whoa, wait, if you're new, break yourself in on this. Don't start off with this stuff right away. So we have doctors that are on our side that are emergency room doctors in Los Angeles, Pueblo, Colorado. Every single day they see cases of cannabis-induced psychosis every day. And they see also every day cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is uncontrolled vomiting due to marijuana. And the doctors tell these people, marijuana is doing this to you. If you stop using marijuana, you'll stop vomiting. And the response is, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, okay? What kind of crazy doctor are you? This is marijuana, it's not just a plant. Marijuana couldn't be causing this. I'm gonna go home and take a hot shower. They find that taking a hot shower somehow reduces their symptoms a little bit. So in the states that have had marijuana legalized for a while, this has been happening for a while. It's just starting to happen in states like New York and New Jersey, which are relatively new. And we're trying to get lawsuits going. Back in the 60s and 70s, marijuana was 1 to 3%. Now, everybody is trying to max out the THC levels. And they will actually advertise on the internet, which is illegal under federal law, that we have the highest potency THC. Come on to our place and we'll get you really, really stoned. Okay. And the reason that the potency level is higher is because they have been genetically working on this for the last 20 or 30 years. And they've had scientists working on it because they know that if they can get people hooked, they'll have customers. Now, I'm a recovered addict myself. I've been sober 55 years. Okay? You should not applaud me for that, okay? That is demeaning. Because if I said that I had cancer and I got cancer treatment, you probably wouldn't applaud for me, okay? When we start treating addiction like any other illness, and that when somebody sensibly responds to their illness, they do not deserve applause. So I'll just point that out to you. But I have wondered why when we have a legislative hearing, is the room full of people advocating on behalf of marijuana? Now, if there was a bill to legalize fentanyl or heroin, or to increase the percentage of alcohol, the room would not be full of people, okay? But yet it happens with marijuana. Why is that? Marijuana, and I've asked the head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse in New Jersey, in the United States, to research this. What is it about marijuana that turns these people into fanatics, okay? And if you've ever debated a marijuana user, they go right to getting angry right away. They get into threatening. I've had them threaten me. I've had to call the police on some of them. You don't see that with heroin addicts or alcoholics or meth addicts. You don't see that. But these people it becomes an existential issue for them, okay? Because their whole life depends on marijuana. It becomes their spiritual life, their social life, their food life. It becomes everything to them. And their life begins to dry up all around except for the marijuana, and it becomes everything. I remember at an FDA hearing, there was a guy sitting in front of me who looked like an old hippie from the 1960s, and he was wearing a baseball cap and so forth, and long hair and the whole deal, which is how I used to look. But anyway, he had a cape on, like Superman, and had a marijuana plant on the cape, okay? So I was talking with him, and we were talking about marijuana, and he said, I've been using marijuana for 50 years, and it's had no effect on me at all, negatively. And I thought, okay, well, you're showing up at an FDA hearing wearing a marijuana cape. I guess that's okay, I don't know. But this is the kind of, they get into this complete delusion of what is going on. And we don't count that. We think that we can deal with these people rationally, and we can't, because we are threatening their very existence, and they're going to react emotionally. And a lot of the people that are making decisions on the part of the government are marijuana users. When we have sued towns in New Jersey for implementing marijuana stores, it's most of the time we can threaten them with a lawsuit and back off. The towns that do not back off are where they have city council members who are potheads. They will not back off. They will fight to the death to have that marijuana store in their town. We have a town of 15,000 people in New Jersey that they want to put in 6 marijuana stores in a town of 15,000 people, including consumption lounges where people can go and get high and then walk out on the street. And they're fighting us for years in a lawsuit now to avoid getting that thrown out. So it affects your brain. You have cannabinoid receptors throughout your body and your brain, and this completely enslaves a person. And this is why there's so much energy that I see on the other side. And when there's a legislative hearing, the potheads from all the surrounding states will show up. They have a very strong network. And the legislator is not aware that these people are from all over. They just see a room full of people which they think are citizens in New Jersey, and my God, there's a lot of interest in this. So that's why emotional arguments work, because they get confronted with a barrage of letters and all kinds of things coming at them. Mental illness, there is no question anymore that marijuana causes mental illness, and we have lawsuits going on that right now. Regular marijuana users are 5 times more likely to develop psychosis. Pot use is strongly correlated with psychosis. Harms the young people. I'll give you an idea of how the state government gets enthralled with marijuana. Colorado, the Attorney General in Colorado did a study on youth suicides. No mention of marijuana, none, okay? But the Department of Health in Colorado showed that suicides of young people in the ages of 15 and 19, marijuana overwhelmingly was found in their bodies, and yet no mention of it. No mention of it, okay? And that's what we've been seeing. IQ loss due to marijuana, that's a fact. It is a pathway drug or a gateway drug to other drugs. That is also very clear.
How do you argue that the gateway thing? Because that is counter-argued also.
Exactly.
So
We'll get to question and answers. We can do that. Okay. Now, I have a photograph here. In Dutch, we call this a stink deer. Okay, it's a skunk. Okay, I don't know how many countries have skunks, but we have produced the best paper in the world on the dangers of marijuana smoke, which I can make available to you. I researched it for about a year and put all the studies together concisely and so forth. We're going to be filing a marijuana smoking lawsuit at some point. I'll make this available to you. There is no question that marijuana smoke is more dangerous than tobacco smoke, and particularly secondhand smoke. There are more dangerous particulates produced by marijuana than by tobacco. Vaping, that is a method of delivery for marijuana. 76% of lung illnesses from vaping were linked to THC vapes. So it's causing a lot of physical damage. There is an argument that marijuana reduces opiate use. Not true. Okay, we've done the research on it, and this summarizes it here. In fact, JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, reported that medical marijuana was associated with a 23% increase in opiate deaths in the States. Pain. The marijuana industry, as a matter of fact, they say that we have a right to be free from pain. Marijuana is not a good pain reliever. That's a myth. We have papers on this, the studies. Lancet, which is a very respected British medical journal, said that actually cannabis users had greater pain and lower self-efficacy in managing pain than other people. And yet, for medical marijuana in the United States, pain is the #1 reason people are getting marijuana. Now, I'm a personal injury lawyer, okay? I can tell you that there's no medical test to determine if somebody has pain. It's all based on what the person says. There's no blood test and nothing. So these people, 22-year-old, completely healthy people walking in saying, oh, doc, I got a backache. Oh, okay, you got a backache. Well, here's marijuana. And that's what's going on. People that are perfectly healthy are getting medical marijuana. And marijuana is not safer than alcohol. Pound for pound, marijuana is more dangerous in all the categories, such as needing more to get the desired effect, causing serious problems at home. I tried the limit, I failed. All the categories that make alcohol dangerous are increased with marijuana. Colorado is now #1 in the United States for first-time use. Now, similar to alcohol, a majority of the marijuana users are using the majority of the marijuana. So you'll see the two red here. 22% of marijuana users are responsible for 67% of the use. And that's very similar to alcohol and tobacco. Now, this is shocking. A university in Colorado had a woman call marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries. And she said, I'm in the first trimester of my pregnancy. Would you recommend marijuana? Almost 70% of them said yes. And some of them recommended high potency marijuana. And this is what they're telling pregnant women. And they said, fine, go ahead and use it. This is documented. The study is documented. The states, most of the states are not warning women who are pregnant about this. The only state that's really got a really good warning is my home state, New Jersey. And you have to know that that's a result of a lawsuit. I sued them back in 2001, and part of the lawsuit was that you're not telling people the truth about marijuana. So the New Jersey has the best warning on their website about marijuana use. They go into a lot of detail, a lot of different things, all the stuff that they learned from us. But the problem is it's on their website, and I gotta stop. It's on their website, but it's not being given to the people. I want to just end really quickly. The other issues to consider are environmental issues. We've given you a paper on that in the handout. And